Hello, today we're gonna learn about object-oriented programming and this part one, and there will be other parts following this clip. Okay, so these are the agenda that we're gonna cover. First, I would like you to understand about programming paradigms and understand about what is object-oriented programming, and then we're gonna learn about classes in Python and Python objects or instance and how to define a class in Python, how to create object or instantiate object, and also understand about instant methods and the difference between instant method, class method, and static methods. Okay, so here, what is paradigm? Paradigm can also be termed as method to solve some problem, to do some task. Programming paradigm is an approach to solve problem using some programming language. So we actually have been working on uh, the programs by using imperative programming paradigms. Uh, and this work by changing the program state through assignment statements. It performs step-by-step tasks by changing state. And the main focus is on how to achieve the goal. And this paradigm just consists of several statements. And after execution of all the result is stored. And there are pros and cons of imperative programming paradigm. The advantages are very simple to implement. It contains loop and variables, but they also have disadvantages, which are complex problem cannot be solved and less efficient and less productive. So actually, there are many categories of imperative programming paradigm. The one that we have been used is procedural programming paradigm, and the problem with this paradigm is that the problem complex problem cannot be solved. And here we're gonna learn about object-oriented programming, and object-oriented programming is designed to handle all kind of real life problems which are today scenario. And the main advantage of object-oriented programming is code reusability. And there's also another approach called parallel processing approach. This approach seem to be like divide and conquer. And there are also another paradigm called declarative programming paradigm. And with this paradigm, it expresses logic of computation without talking about its control flow. The focus is on what needs to be done rather than how it should be done. Basically, emphasize on what code is actually doing. And this already different between imperative, which is how to do, and declarative, which we just tell what to do. Programming paradigm. Okay, so let's see the examples of the difference between imperative response and declarative response. Suppose that there's the question, how do I go from KKU to icon CM? So if we use imperative paradigm, the response will be go out via route 2, take exit to 11 and take Surasak Road, South Sathorn Road, Guthoburi Road, and Jalernakon Road. But if we use declarative paradigm, the response would be, oh, Icon Siam is at 299, เจริญนคร Road, คลองตัน,คลองสาน, and Bangkok. So with the declarative paradigm, it just tell the goal, right? The place that we actually want to go, but we don't specify how to go there like imperative paradigm. So what is object-oriented programming? So object-oriented programming is a programming paradigm which provides a means of structuring programs so that properties and behaviors are bundled into individual objects. For instance, an object could represent a person with a name, property, age, address, with behaviors like walking, talking, bathing, and running. Programming language that support imperative paradigm and declarative paradigm as follow. For imperative paradigm, the programming languages that support are C, C++, and Java. But for declarative paradigm, the programming languages that support are SQL and HTML. But some languages can support both paradigm like JavaScript, C Sharp, and Python. So, why are we interested in object oriented programming? Because we want to use object oriented programming for modeling real world. Object oriented programming is an approach for modeling concrete real world things like cars, as well as relation between things like companies and employees, students, and teachers. OP models real world entities as software objects which have some data associated with them and can perform certain function. What if we don't use OP? Uh, you can use function by themselves in what is called a procedural programming approach, but a procedural style can suffix for writing short, simple programs. An object-oriented programming approach becomes more valuable, uh, especially when the program grows in size and complexity. And the more data and function comprise your code, the more important it is to arrange them into logical subgroup. So data and function that are related should be grouped together, and that data and function which are not related don't interfere with each other. So modular code is easier to understand and modify, and lend itself more to reuse. And code reuse is very valuable because it reduces development time and maintenance time. So imagine a program with 100 functions and 100 separate global variables all in the same file. That would be a very difficult program to maintain because all the variable could potentially be modified by all the function, and it would be difficult to see which function use which variables. On the other hand, for advantages of OP or object-oriented programming is that it combines data with the function which act upon that data in a single structure. And this makes it easy for us to find related part of our code since they are physically divided in close proximity to one another. It's easy to write our code in such a way that the data inside each object is accessed as much as possible only through the objects method. Okay, now let's learn about the important terminology in OP. The first term that you should understand is class. What is a class? A class is a user-defined prototype for an object that define a set of attributes that characterize any object of the class. And the attributes are data members. And data members are include like class attribute and instance attribute and methods accessed via dot notation. What is an object? So an object is a unique instance of a data structure of a class, right? A data structure that's defined by its class. An object comprises both data member and methods. And data member is a class attribute or instance attribute that holds data associated with a class and its object. Okay, so let's see the pictures to help us to understand more about class and objects. Right here, we may have a class car, and a class car maybe has attributes like color and model, right? But then different car objects will have its own color, right? The first car has color as green, the second car has color as blue, and uh, so you can see that different objects will have its own values of attributes. So there also the concept of class attribute. And a class attribute is an attribute that is shared by all instances of a class. And class attributes are divided within a class but outside any of the class method. Class attributes are not used as frequently as an instant attributes. Like, let's go back to car example here. So, um, an example of class attribute of class car may be like number of wheels, right? Uh, so suppose that here we assume that all cars have the same number of views. So maybe the number of views will be 4, right? So all car objects will share this class attribute together. In contrast, if it's instant attribute, is example is color, right? Because each instant or each object will have its own value of color, right? The first car object has the instant attribute color as with the green value, right? But the second car and instant attribute color has the value as blue. Okay, an instant is like synonym with an individual object. So an instant is an object that belong to a class, right? Okay, so for instant attribute is an attribute that is defined inside a method and belong only to the current instance of a class. And method is a special kind of function that is divided in a class definition. So I hope that now you understand the difference between class and instance. So class are a way of grouping together related data and function which add upon the data, right? Class car which has data as color and model, and maybe it has function as speed, brake, right? So a class is a kind of data type, just like a string, integer, or list. And when we create an object of that data type, we call it an instance of a class. So in Python, everything is an object. Everything is an instance of some class. Class and types are themselves objects, and they are of type. You can find out the type of any object using the type function. So how to define a class in Python? Here we use the keyword class, and class here is all upper or lowercase letter. And then after that we find class with class name. And for the class name, it should start with an uppercase letter and then following with colon. And then after that, we're gonna define class. And if we have nothing to define, we just use the keyword pass. So here all class create object and all objects contain characteristic called attributes. And in Python, we use ini method to initialize an object initial attributes by giving them default values. And this method must have at least one argument as well as the self variable, which refer to the object itself. And it's important to note that the attributes set on the object in the init function do not form an exhaustive list of all the attributes that our object is even allowed to have. We could even add a completely unrelated attribute from outside the object. And init method doesn't have to take any parameters except self. So init methods need to have at least one parameter, which is self. So what is self? So our method definition have self as the first parameter, and we use this variable inside the method body. And this because when we call a method on an object, the object itself is automatically passed in as the first parameter. So self uh, come from the term the object itself. So this gives us a way to access the object properties from inside the object's method. So here we have age method and we pass cell here. And because we pass cell, then we can access the object itself. Okay, let's see the example here. Here when we have class dog, maybe we want to describe a dog using two attributes which are name and age. So at line number 3, we define ini method and observe that when we define ini method, we actually use two underscore and then ini two underscore, and the first parameter is cell, and then following with instance attribute, and here is name and age. And then at line number 4, we say cell.name equal to name. So cell.name here means the name attribute of the object itself equal to name that's passed in as the input parameter of init. Likewise, the age attribute of of this object itself is equal to age, which is input parameter that's passed in by init method. In the case of dog class, each dog has a specific name and age, which is obviously important to know for when you start actually creating different dogs. Similarly, the cell variable is also an instance of the class, and the need for the special cell variable will help keep track the value of each individual instance. Okay. While instance attributes are specific to each object, like here for class dog, we have instance attribute as name and age, right? Class attributes are the same for all instance, which in case is all dogs. So actually, all dogs has species as mammal, right? So observe that when we define class attribute, is actually outside every method in the class. But here, if it's instant attribute like name and age, we initialize the value inside the ini method. Okay, so in this example, name and age are instant attributes, while species are is class attribute. Okay, and here we actually can access class attribute by using the class name, because that attribute is belong to the class, right? So we can access by using class name. So here when we define, we need to define outside every method, and when we use it, when we access it, we use with the class name. So here, because we define species at mammal, and then when we print it out, so we got the message species of dog is mammal. On the other hand, for instant values, instant attribute, here name and age are instant attribute, right? And when we instantiate object or create objects, and here we have two objects, we can observe that these two objects have different names and age, right? It has each dog has its own name and age. And this demo problem one, I encourage you to do demo problem one, and when you do and when you want to check, you can check with the web app that TA has implemented. Okay. Okay, for instant method are divided inside a class and are used to get the content of an instance. They can also be used to perform operations with the attributes of our object. Like the init method, the first argument is always cell. So here we see other instant methods beside init method. Here we have instant method as description, and the first parameter is cell, and the second instant method is speed, and the first parameter is cell, and the next parameter is sound, right? And here, but when we call the instant method, we actually don't call with cell. Here, description doesn't have any other parameters besides cell. So when we call, we just call with the description without any parameter. Likewise, for speak, we have only input parameter that is cell, which is sound. So when we call it, we also have only one argument. And this also demo problem tool that will help you to understand more and be able to initialize instant attribute, uh, instant method, and class attribute. Okay, next we look at private attributes. So if we want to define private attribute, we can prefix with an underscore or two underscore. Okay, so When the attribute is private, that means we should not it should not be accessed directly. So for example here, class teacher has init method which has name and salary, but salary here has the underscore prefix before salary, so this private attribute. And all the attributes which are defined on a person instance are instant attribute. So here uh, we have class person. Title here are class attribute, right? But title, name, surname here are instant attribute. So here we can also access class attribute via cell here. And if there's the uh, value error, then we raise value error. Otherwise, we just initialize title to be the title that pass in as input parameter and so on. Okay, so all the person object will actually share the same title class attribute, and class attribute are often used to define constants which are closely associated with a particular class. Although we can use class attribute from class instance, we can also use them from class object without creating an instance. And let's look at the example here. So here we have a title as tuple, Dr., Mr., Mrs., uh, and Miss. And here we have defined the method init, which has self parameter, title, name, and surname. And then we print out person the title, right? And then uh, we also print person the title 0, which is doctor. But here when we say print person dot title 1 is access Mr. Here we also have class method. Previously we have defined method as instant method, but if we want to define it as class method, we're gonna have decorator at class method above the class above the method definition. So what's the difference between class method and instant method? Class method will access and update the value of class attribute. Uh, so here a class method actually receive the class as implicit first argument, just like an instant method receive the instant. Okay, so let's see the example of class method. So here at line number 9, we have decorator at class method above the method from birth year, right? And the first parameter here, instead of using cell, here we use class CLS. And then here with class here, we actually then can access uh, the way that we can create the object of the class. So here, this method from birth year actually return the object of person. So the object of person will call the init method. Here you can observe that the first parameter is name and the second parameter is age, which compute by date dot today dot year minus birth year. Okay, and here display is instant method, but from birth year is class method. You can observe that if it's instant method, it doesn't have decorator, right? Class method, right? And then we create the object of person, and then we call the instant method display. And then at this line, the line number 19, we actually create the object by calling the class method from birth year and specify name as John and also specify birth year. And then when we call the instance method display, it also display the correct values of name and age. So class method is a method which is bound to the class, not the object of the class. They have the access to the state of the class, and it takes a class parameter and point to the class and not the object instance. It can modify a class state that would apply across all the instance of the class. For example, it can modify a class variable that will be applicable to all the instance. And this demo property that will help you to understand more about class method. And you need to define class method to set and get class attribute using name. Okay, another type of method is called static method. A static method does not receive any implicit first argument like instance method or class method. A static method is also a method which is bound to the class, not the object of the class. A static method cannot access or modify class state. So why do we have static methods? Uh, it's just a helper method. Uh, So we don't want to repeat the code again and again. So some code that we want to it to be reused easily within the class context, then we define it as static method. So here a class method take class as first parameter, but a static method needs no specific parameter. A class method can access or modify class state, but a static method cannot access or modify it. In general, static methods know nothing about class state. They are utility type methods that take some parameters and work upon those parameters. Utility type methods are like methods that help to um, compute something or help to process some data. So we use add class method decorator in Python to create a class method, and we use add static method decorator to create a static method. So when to use what? We generally use class method to create factory method. Factory method return class object, right? In class person, we have class method as for birth year, right? And that's also return the object of class person. But for static method, we use to create utility functions. Okay, here you can see the difference between um, class method and static method, right? So here, class method from birth year is actually return the object of person, while static method is just like a utility function help us to check something, to compute something, or to process some data. Right? It define the method is adult, and is adult will accept the input parameter as age, and if age is greater than 18, then is adult return true. Otherwise, is adult return false. So here this the example of calling class method and static method. And for demo problem 5, then you also learn how to create two instance method that to compute the area and perimeter of a rectangle, and static method to keep get an input from a user until the user enter a valid decimal number, and the outputs are into decimal places. And these are reference for this slide. Okay, I hope that you understand more about object oriented programming. Thank you for your attention. Bye.